Canada, India, USA Development Forum, Health Forum, session number 1. Canada, India, USA Development Forum is an Ontario, Canada-based not-for-profit organization working to promote bilateral and trilateral relations between Canada, India, and USA. CIUDF organizes events, conferences, and speaker series lectures with prominent corporate and political leaders in all 3 countries for ideas exchange and knowledge sharing. The forum recently opened up for memberships, and 18 companies or professionals have joined so far as members in the last 3 months, with the goal to raise the membership to about 300 or more by December 31st next year. CIUDF also hosts virtual member meetings once a month, and once the pandemic measures are eased, we will host monthly brunch meetings for members and sponsors. So I am the founder, president, and CEO of the forum. Next page. These are the activities that we normally do. Canada, India Insight Conference, an annual conference. Canada, India, USA annual trilateral conference. Business leaders roundtables, political leaders roundtables. Membership expansion, of course, just like any other organization. We do a lot of member networking events, virtual in-person brunch meetings, Consul Generals roundtables, education forum. That is something that we are starting from next week on Thursday with various colleges and universities all across Canada. And the health forum today being the first session. So there will be a total of 12 virtual health sessions like this one. We also have a monthly Canada India Insight e-paper. Plus we do several webinars and virtual sessions on current affairs and issues of importance. So as I mentioned, the health forum will have 12 sessions spread over the next 4 months, and we'll bring together frontline workers, doctors, mayor, city and regional councillors, mental health, anxiety, wellness, nutrition, and other sector experts, as well as Brampton residents and businesses. The topic for today's session is programs, services, and resources offered by City of Brampton during COVID-19. And we will hear from the Mayor of Brampton, Patrick Brown, Medical Officer of Health for Peel, Dr. Lawrence Lowe, as well as Councillors Gurpreet, Dhillon, Rowena, Santos, Charmaine Williams. Jeff Bowman may not join us and because he is unable to join. However, Rick Bernard will speak in his place. The Health Forum is supported by City of Brampton's Advance Brampton Fund and co-sponsored by Tangentia, Truly Financial, Blue Umbrella Financial Services, and Krins Life Sciences. Today's session will be moderated by myself, Vipul Jani, as well as Tejas Everly, the Health Forum coordinator. As I was saying earlier, the entire recording for today's event will be posted as a YouTube video on our website, on all the social media platforms, and also covered in the Canada India Insight e-paper coming out next month. So with that, let us invite the first speaker of today, since Mayor Brown, I believe, has not joined us yet. Let me see. Okay, so I guess since Councillor Santos has to leave a bit early, we can start with her. Tejas, if you can bring up her profile. Okay, so Rowena Santos is Peel Regional Councillor for Wards 1 and 5, the first Filipino elected to council in Brampton. She holds the HBBA degree from Schulich School of Business and a master's in sustainable development and environmental planning from London School of Economics. Prior to being elected a councillor, she worked at the Ontario legislature for over a decade, and before politics, worked at top-tier corporations like Magna, RBC, and General Mills. She was the program manager of corporate citizenship with Imagine Canada and executive director of Imagine, working with venture capitalists and entrepreneurs at the Center for Social Innovation. So over to you, Councillor Santos.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Rowena Santos, Regional Councillor here in the beautiful city of Brampton, and I'm also Chair of Community Services at the City of Brampton and co-chair of the Mayor's COVID-19 Social Support Task Force. I want to begin by hoping that everybody is keeping very well and healthy and safe with their families during these unprecedented times. And I want to give a special thank you to Vipal and Tejas for inviting me to participate in today's healthcare forum. It's also very good to be here with my colleagues alongside Mayor Brown and my other councillor colleagues here at the City of Brampton, as well as Dr. Lowe, to hear about our programs, services, as well as resources offered by the city. As we all know, COVID-19 has really challenged all of us, and the City of Brampton identified very quickly the kinds of tools needed to support the community during uncertain times. And within a week of school closures last year in March, when everything started to shut down, we immediately established the Mayor's COVID-19 Social Support Task Force and other special task forces in order to ensure that residents were provided the support that they needed. This pandemic has no doubt proved to be a global challenge. However, certain segments of the population that we considered vulnerable pre-pandemic even faced more immense difficulties in obtaining resources for their most basic needs. And it has made me very proud to see our entire community, our entire city come together to lend a hand. The Social Support Task Force set up a centralized network of food distribution and support with partner agencies like the Knights Table, Regeneration, Outreach, Khalsa Aid, and United Sikhs. We also worked with Global Medic on food supply and received an outpouring of support from the community and from corporations. I'd like to share some of the work that the Social Support Task Force has done to date to help support vulnerable people and families affected by COVID-19. Our Social Support Task Force has continuously provided support to Brampton residents who are socioeconomically dependent on various resources that have become inaccessible because of COVID-19 conditions. Circumstantial restrictions resulted in changes to services, which additional barriers were created in accessing much needed services such as food banks and meal programs. When things started to shut down, it became more difficult, especially for those in need, to access some services. And so we developed a system in order to make it accessible during this time. To date, we responded to over 3,500 grocery and food requests, most of which have been for families with children. We've responded to hundreds of requests through email and through 311. We transitioned 52 people experiencing homelessness and living in encampment sites throughout Brampton into shelters with the help of our partners at the Region of Peel. We organized, assembled, and distributed 165 emergency kits that went to families that were most affected by the emergency. And we also distributed 161 school supply kits to ensure children had the tools to go to school and learn. Along with connecting individuals with housing resources, our task force developed and implemented multiple solutions to support individuals experiencing homelessness during the pandemic, which included the following: distributing homeless survival kits so that individuals experiencing homelessness had the necessary supplies to survive, but also to feel that they have a community supporting them. Facilitating the installation of 6 portable toilets around the downtown core to fill the gap of inadequate washroom facilities available during the pandemic due to closures. When everything closed down, the libraries in particular were safe places for people who didn't have a home to access washrooms. And so in the city of Brampton, we made sure that despite those closures, there was some sort of decent place for those who didn't have a home to actually access washroom facilities. Developing homelessness support signage to help guide individuals to essential services, collaborating with the Region of Peel to install sharps disposal receptacles in various locations across the city, and collaborating with our regional partners to open a drop-in center where people can access resources, services, and necessary items, including medical support. This work has continued over 60 weeks. during this pandemic, and it's ongoing still today. We have learned so much through this task force, and one of the most important things has been seeing the power of collaboration. The work of the task force was only possible through active collaboration amongst all partners. These included internal departments, members of council, regional counterparts, community agencies, local businesses, and dedicated residents. We developed and managed the centralized volunteer system for volunteers to be utilized by all task forces. Throughout the emergency, we recruited, trained, and deployed 172 volunteers. Our community has been extremely generous, and our task force has been responsible for managing the donations that we have been receiving. And get this, we distributed approximately 53,000 pounds of food and almost 86,000 products such as masks, hygiene kits, sanitizer, and so on. Our community and the city has shown tremendous resilience, and we have navigated through this difficult time with vigor and compassion. Together, we continue our fight for equitable support from other levels of government while making the most of what we have and providing support for each other. Finally, I just want to say, if you or someone you know needs access to food support or other support, please call 311. And if you or someone you know requires support from the 24/7 street helpline to access housing, please call 1-877-848-8481. Thank you very much, and that's my update and remarks for all of you. Enjoy today's session.
Thank you, Regional Councillor Santos. I will just ask you one quick question, as we mentioned at the beginning. So after each remarks, there will be one question for each speaker, and then we'll move to the next speaker. So the question for you is, as they say, every crisis provides new opportunities, and every dark cloud has a silver lining. In the last 15 months, we have seen a lot of dark clouds, and the serious crisis. So what have you seen or heard or experienced firsthand that makes you think that better days are ahead?
Yeah, and I kind of shared it in my remarks earlier. The community spirit in our city, the collaboration that we have seen, the generosity that we've seen from our residents, from corporations, from our kids having food drives to support other families in need. That is truly the hopeful optimism that I see coming in out of this pandemic. Our community really knows how to come together and support each other, despite the challenges related to the fact that we do have inequitable access to resources. When you compare Brampton to some other municipalities like Kingston, which I'm sure the mayor can talk about, we time and time again get constantly overlooked, and it's a constant fight for us to access or to get a hospital or to get equitable access to vaccines or to get more testing and support. And we yell and scream about it, and we're starting to see some progress now. But at the end of the day, the foundation of our community here in Brampton is hopeful, and we are always there to support each other. And so that's the hopefulness that I see. And as the vaccine starts to roll out and more people get vaccinated, I think we're going to be coming out of this stronger as a community. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for that answer and for joining us today. And you can stay with us as long as you are available. So we'll now move to our keynote speaker for today, Mayor of Brampton, Patrick Brown. So Tejas, if you can bring up the intro. So His Worship Mayor Patrick Brown, he is the Mayor of Brampton since October 2018. No stranger to any of us. We know him for a long time. He was first elected in 2000 as a councillor in Barrie. Mayor Brown served 2 terms in City Council before getting elected as a Member of Parliament. He was re-elected for 2 more times. From 2006 to 2014, Patrick Brown was chair of the Canada-India Parliamentary Association. In 2015, he became an MPP for Simcoe North, as well as leader of the Ontario PC Party. He served as leader of opposition and an education critic. Patrick Brown has now started Hockey Night in Brampton to raise funds for William Osler Health System Foundation, and raised over $400,000 in the very first edition. So as I was just telling him in the chat box, this is a Brampton-focused health forum. There are going to be 12 virtual sessions like this, different topics, different speakers, and we'll be bringing together a lot of frontline healthcare workers, doctors, experts from the mental health, anxiety, nutrition, wellness, different sectors from all over Brampton, as well as Brampton residents and businesses as well. To discuss about the challenges, the pandemic, the recovery, and whatnot. And it's also partly funded by City of Brampton's Advanced Brampton Fund. So over to you, Mayor Brown.
Well, Vipul, I want to thank you for this opportunity to talk about healthcare. But before I start talking about healthcare in Brampton, I want to acknowledge that Vipul has been a tremendous bridge between the diaspora in Canada, in places like Brampton, and in India. And I know the work you've done with India and Canada is commendable to encouraging bilateral relations. And I'd be remiss not to mention that right now we are seeing real pain and adversity in India. And I want to send my best wishes to our friends and family in India who are fighting a very difficult wave of COVID-19. Tomorrow I will be speaking at the ICCC fundraiser, Oxygen for Life. And just recently I supported Dr. Dubey's fundraiser for ventilators. I actually purchased a ventilator on behalf of each of my children to support Dr. Dubey's fundraiser to send ventilators to India. Our community is tremendously connected to India, and their healthcare system right now, because of a lack of oxygen and other equipment, is under tremendous strain. And I want you to know that our city council passed a motion of solidarity and support, and we stand with India during this difficult hour. The second thing that I wanted to reference is when I think of healthcare, it's not simply the infrastructure. And I know there'll be a lot talked about equitable dollars on infrastructure, and I'll get to that. But I want to also talk about preventative healthcare. We don't do enough on preventative healthcare. And I think there is a missing component to healthcare in Canada, and that is, how do you prevent people from going to the hospital in the first place? What are we doing to encourage healthier lifestyles? And there's a few ways we can do that. One, you can create healthier diets. And of course, there are healthy eating initiatives, but you can also change lifestyles to have more active lifestyles. We have rising rates of obesity, more cardiac issues. And so this city council in Brampton has focused on active transportation, running, walking, cycling, building more green space, building more recreation, from cricket to baseball to soccer to outdoor ice hockey. We have invested in infrastructure to say we want to build an active and healthy community, because an active community, a healthy community, will be less reliant on the healthcare system. When it comes to infrastructure and healthcare, we have spoken about getting our fair share, and we are starting to make real strides and progress. Our city council actually declared a healthcare emergency in relation to the underfunding, the systemic underfunding of healthcare that frankly has plagued Brampton for the last 3 decades. And every party has some blame in that. NDP, PCs, and Liberals together have historically underfunded Brampton. From Bob Ray to Mike Harris to Kathleen Lynn, Dalton McGuinty, and up to the present day, we felt there wasn't a focus on Brampton. And so by declaring a healthcare emergency and bringing this to the national attention, CBC, Toronto Star, Global, CP24, we brought the attention to Brampton's systemic underfunding and created the largest petition in our city history. The response of the government was to, in this recent budget, to make a pledge to build a new hospital in Brampton. This is a $1 billion commitment that is the largest healthcare investment in Ontario at this moment. And it's exciting because it's a recognition that there needs to be some catch up. More will need to be done. This is a step in the right direction. They also committed to building a medical school, which will help with health human resources. Right now, Brampton has half the per capita beds that is the provincial average. On average, the investment in healthcare in Canada is $1,000 less per capita in Brampton per resident. And so we're talking about real issues. We're talking about real challenges. And I don't think there has been a correlation with healthcare investment and where there has been growth, where there has been population growth, and that's compounded the problem in Brampton. But I should say we've got good people on the task. I look at the work that Dr. Lawrence Lowe is doing with Peel Public Health, and he's looking out for us. I look at Dr. Naveed Mohammed, who's the president and CEO of the Osler Health System, and he's exceptional. You know, when I talk to Dr. Lowe, he's working 7 days a week, looking out for us. When I talk to Dr. Naveed Mohammed, not only does he work 7 days a week, he still goes in 1 day a week as a doctor. He's running the hospital, but he spends a day on the front lines to make sure he never loses touch of what the front lines is actually facing and looking like. And so we made a commitment to fight hallway medicine, to get better healthcare for our residents. And we are making progress because we are not accepting less. We are not accepting refusals and rebuttals because our residents deserve the same quality healthcare that exists everywhere in the province. And I can tell you right now, the focus is on COVID, and we are making that same plea. When we weren't getting the testing and the vaccines that we expected, we stood up and we fought back because we were Brampton proud. And now we're getting a higher allocation of vaccines, 19%, and we're getting more testing than we had previously been allocated. And so sometimes a squeaky wheel gets attention. And I can tell you, Brampton will not be bullied. Brampton will not be ignored. And I think our stance on healthcare is a reflection of that. I know Councillor Santos just spoke, and I want to commend her for being one of the most outspoken voices when it comes to active transportation and healthy lifestyles. Councillor Harkirat Singh, who I believe will be on this forum at some point, was one of the people that was most active on declaring a healthcare emergency. And I'm grateful for that. Frankly, every member of City Council has been outspoken in terms of the push to get a fair share for healthcare. And so I'm grateful for our city councillors who have been on the front lines of this fight. But senior club to community organization to youth, left, right, and center, the community has come together to fight for better healthcare. And I just want to say thank you. So thank you, Vipul, for this opportunity to share a few words with your health forum today.
Thank you for giving us the time, Mayor Brown, and also thank you for fighting for insurance rates in Brampton. You know, it's a long pending issue, and I think Brampton has been penalized very wrongly just because of the postal codes. You know how much insurance rates we are paying. So thank you for picking up that campaign as well. And as I mentioned, I have got one question for you before we move to the next speaker. So as you know, as we discussed last month also, you know, when I met with you in person last month at the City Hall, Brampton was growing at a phenomenal pace with several big ticket projects, you know, in the works prior to the pandemic. So have we lost any of those big projects, or have any of them slowed down, any delays? Have you noticed any significant impact on investments coming into the city?
Well, I think it'd be unfair to say COVID hasn't curtailed economic activity. It has. The signature projects that we're working on in terms of the new hospital, the med school, the Riverwalk, the new transit facility, those are still all steam ahead, full steam ahead. Yeah, there has been projects that have been limited because of COVID. You know, look at our startup hub, Beehive. You know, the startup visa program in Canada was temporarily halted. So there have been examples where COVID has stifled economic activity. At one point at the beginning of the pandemic, there wasn't even construction permitted. So there's been, right now the government's trying to be surgical in what economic activity they allow, but businesses have been shuttered. There's a real toll to the pandemic. It isn't just a health pandemic, it's an economic tidal wave. And so what I'm really concerned about is not necessarily the large corporations that can weather a storm like this, but the small businesses, the mom and pop, small businesses, those small enterprises. I'm worried about them. This pandemic has been really hard.
Yeah, so I mean, it has also taken a huge economic toll at all levels of government. I mean, not just federally. People look at 1.1 trillion and those big numbers federally, but I am sure it has given a big hit to the city as well, because of the transit fares and whatnot. While we have done a commendable job at not raising the property taxes, so I mean, how are we going to bridge that gap, and how long that might take?
So which gap?
The revenue, the financial hit that the city must have taken because of the pandemic.
So we were fortunate that there was a safe restart agreement in partnership with the government of Canada and the province of Ontario that mitigated the financial losses of municipalities. So we were able to get through last year without a financial hit because of that safe restart agreement.
Right. So will that be the same for this year as well? Because I mean, this isn't over yet.
Yeah, the anticipation is that the safe restart agreement will cover 2021 cost as well. Okay,
sure. So is there anything else maybe you want to say before I move to Councillor Gurpreet Dhillon?
No, but thank you, Vipul, for always being an advocate for healthcare in Brampton and for our community, and keep up the great work.
Sure, thank you. So just before we let you go, as I mentioned in the beginning, from next week on Thursday, we are also launching an education forum with various colleges and universities all across Canada. So we are getting the deans and presidents of colleges from Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal, Halifax, and different provinces. So with that, thank you once again.
Well, and Vipul, I would say, since your next speaker is Gurpreet Dhillon, he was the initiator of the insurance motion that you
yes.
Brought up. And this is a new campaign pushing for a fair share for insurance rates. It's very unfair how Bramptonians are charged a surcharge because of lax laws when it comes to the big insurance companies in Ontario. And I appreciate Councillor Dhillon's initiating that campaign that is so important. And so I think that question that you asked me would be very appropriate to ask him on why this campaign is important for Brampton.
Yes, absolutely. So I mean, we all know Gurpreet Dhillon has been a strong advocate of that, not just on that, but on several other issues. And with you now giving a full support, we hope a very favorable resolution to that issue soon. So just if you can now have the profile for
thank you,
Regional Councillor Gurpreet Dhillon. Thank you, Mayor Brown. So Gurpreet Dhillon is a regional councillor for Peel for wards 9 and 10. He successfully lobbied the province to ban misleading door-to-door sales agents. He has also consistently opposed all councillor salary increases and all taxpayer-funded bailouts of private enterprises. In 2015, Gurpreet founded Councillor Dhillon's Drop-In Basketball, which is a free youth initiative that aims to keep kids off the streets and out of gangs through sport. He has also hosted neighborhood safety town halls, municipal one-on-one sessions, and engaged in an annual park tour. And as Mayor Brown has just said, he was one of the first, if not the first, to pick up the issue of insurance for Brampton. So thank you for all that you are doing, Councillor Dhillon, and over to you.
No, thank you so much, Vipulji. Thank you to the Tejas as well, and the entire the Canada, India, USA Development Forum team for organizing this education forum. And so to everybody who's watching today, good morning and thank you for being here and giving me the opportunity to speak and share with you all. As you mentioned, my name is Gurpreet Dhillon. I am the Regional Council for Wards 9 and 10. And I think a lot of the points were really covered today. And as you know, the focus of today's event is COVID-19 and the impact it's had on its residents of Brampton. And in particular, I'm going to speak on the programs and initiatives in relation to seniors that have been offered by the city of Brampton. As you all know, last March, we declared an emergency. The situation was tough on everyone. Seniors, especially seniors and individuals who live alone, they suffered greatly from isolation and everything that was going on around them. And so we had the 4 task forces that were set up, and there was the seniors task force as well, which I was co-chair with Councillor Pat Fortini on. And so this task force supported senior citizens with some of their day-to-day needs, including grocery and prescription pickup, as well as working to improve their mental health by offering something called a seniors digital phone cafe. And so it's basically where if you had you were feeling lonely or isolated, if you were a senior, you were able to call this number we had, where you were able to speak to somebody else and have a conversation with them in your own language, whether it was English, we had Punjabi, we had Hindi, we had Urdu as well, and a number of different languages that are spoken in Brampton. And so in this task force, we supported 273 grocery delivery requests. We had developed a grocery payment program as well, where the seniors would have eventually be able to pay later on and get their groceries delivered. We responded to 805 requests for information and resources. We had 3 senior-specific teletown halls where we had more than 2,500 seniors take part. And I'm very proud that, in particular, our Indian community was very much involved as well. Usually there's a slight hesitation from us to join these things, but we were fully involved. And I speak on behalf of our Indian population as one of the 2 Indian descent councillors. So it was good to get through to that 40% of the population that's not always as interactive in these types of events. But I commend and I tip my turban rather, to the community out there who really took part, and I'll say they were really providing a lot of input, which was super helpful for us. And they're the eyes and ears on the ground, just like all of our residents are. And so they did a great job in that, in terms of helping out in the town halls. We had 22 staff facilitated 22 meetings set up through that digital cafe I was mentioning. And we also held the city's first ever Seniors Appreciation Day on June 19th. And as well, another thing that I'm very proud of is that we were able to deliver about 1,500 seniors kits that had PPE in it, which included reusable masks, hand sanitizers, and medical gloves. Beyond that, we were able to deliver. I was able to deliver almost 1,000 of these to our seniors, and we also had a drive where we asked where we asked our truckers and our transit drivers and our limo and taxi drivers, anybody in the transportation industry, to come in. As you guys all know, in the Indian and South Asian community, those are very big industries which our members are involved. And it's unfortunate that in the limo industry, in particular at Pearson, just at that one place, there was 12 deaths of the drivers, and the majority of the drivers whose deaths there were of South Asian and Indian background. And so it's a really, it was a sad day for our community when we learned of these deaths. And so the last point is that we collaborated with the Region of Peel's Community Response Table Senior Subgroup, and also arranged for grocery support referrals through community partners. And I think the mayor alluded to it, and I think Councillor Santos alluded to how tough it's been for our community. during COVID. And so the insurance issue was mentioned, Vipulji, by you as well. And so when we kind of have to look at everything holistically. And when we talk about the economics of Brampton, we spoke about people's personal financial situation, and healthcare played a big role in kind of putting a stress on people. But when we look at car insurance, if I can just kind of deviate a little bit from the health aspect of it, because the stress that people face of the everyday bills, that was increasing. It's been increasing for decades in Brampton. And so just very quickly, just to speak on the insurance issue, we have the highest rates in Brampton in North America. So we have about $2,700 on average, which we pay for our premiums. But particular to my ward's particular, I know I can speak for Councillor Williams as well. The east end of Brampton seems to be really, really hard hit. L6Rs, which is Ward 9 and 10, they pay on an average of $3,300 per year. L6Ps, $2,792, and so these are just outrageous. And so I was able to bring a motion. We brought a little bit of research done that we got done to council, and fortunately our council unanimously supported having a campaign started, just like we did for healthcare. And so the healthcare campaign was successful. We got the province to listen. Now we're trying to get the province to listen to our residents in terms of insurance and getting rid of postal code discrimination. And so fairdealforbrampton.ca, it's a website. You can go there, you can click on the car insurance aspect of it. And what you can do is sign the petition. And simultaneously, when you sign that petition, you'll also have a letter that's sent to your local MPP as well. So they'll be aware of just how much, how great of an issue this is. And so, those are just some my concluding comments, I guess. And I just want to thank Vipulji once again, you, Tejas, and the whole team and everything you do, not just today, but all the events and other work you do in the community throughout the year. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also acknowledge what's going on in India right now with people all across the subcontinent. I speak to my family members on a daily basis back home, and they're really telling me what's going on. And so we also, a personal friend of ours is a doctor. His name is Dr. Madhu Shankar Devan. He's out of Amritsar. And he called me up and he said, listen, we're having a really tough time down here. So we've been able to collect through partnership with the Pravasi Saheta Foundation, which is run by Rajinder Sani at Pravasi Radio. And so we've raised about $50,000 so far, which we've sent back to India. We've already sent about 40,000+ to them for ventilators, for supplies, for medical supplies, medical equipment, and also some of the medications that are required there. And so this is all due to the residents of Brampton who in the local GTA area who've been so kind to donate and support and help out the fellow brothers and sisters back in India. We're such a, when we talk about NRIs, we're still Indian and we're still all one big family across the globe, the Indian diaspora. And so it's really great to see everybody coming together, really helping out. And, when there was a shortage in supply in vaccines in Canada, it was India who was able to send some of those vaccines to us here too. So again, we're working with one another as a family, and this is what humanity really is. And so when one is down, we support the other, and that's what we've been doing. And so again, I just want to say thanks to everybody. Thanks to my council colleagues and everybody else who joined today. Thanks for the time.
Sure. Thank you for all those wonderful remarks, Gurpreet ji. Actually, some of our members, also the forum members, including some of the sponsors as well of the health forum, including Sandeep Todi from Truly Financial, they have been doing an amazing work of providing, the support to India, including ventilators and concentrators and whatnot. Maybe I should connect them to you as well. Together, I guess we can do more.
100%, yes.
Collectively, I mean, we can definitely contribute a bit more. As this session has been going on, I will ask you one quick question before we move to Councillor Williams. So we all know you have always opposed government bailouts of private enterprises. However, last 15 months, we have seen bailouts that nobody ever thought was even possible. The amounts, I mean, staggering amounts, hundreds of millions of dollars, including, large scale waste in emergency wage subsidy, as Toronto Star and Global Mail reported last week, and other programs. So do you fear that this is setting a very unhealthy long-term precedent? While I mean it's necessary right now, but is it setting up a very unhealthy long-term precedent, which will be very difficult to stop at the local city level?
So are you, thank you for the question, firstly. Are you referring to the CERB payments?
No, overall, I mean, overall the money that has been given to companies for rent, for wage,
Gotcha.
a lot of that has not been reaching the right, for the right purpose. A lot of money has gone to companies that are actually making billions of dollars in profit.
Yeah. Actually, I've read a bit about that, and so I've been always, we live in Canada, we live in a free market, and I think that the free market kind of it polices itself in such a way where it's really left up to consumers to decide what they want to purchase, or it's left up to any enterprise to figure out how they want to market and sell their different products, etc., and all that. And so that's one of the beauties of living in Canada, is the freedom. But at the same time, we also understand, there's certain, obviously the pandemic, so there's certain situations such as what we're going through now where they do need supports. And sometimes these companies are too big to fail and too important for our economy. So which is why if they were to receive a loan, I think that's something that's appropriate. We saw that during the recession in 2008, and so. But obviously, there was situations then where it was taken advantage of, where they'd get the loans, they'd still give these big payouts and bonuses to some of their executives, which is on an ethical perspective, that's wrong. And so when we talk about kind of setting up a precedent for the future, I'd like to make sure that we learn from this lesson. We make sure that we have the supports in place to ensure that, or the companies have their own supports in place to deal with something like this. And so right now was a learning lesson for everybody. I don't want to see any business go down, but one thing I would say is that we should, I was looking for more supports for our smaller businesses, which is really the backbone and the engine of our economy. And so I was dealing with a number of them, and they were talking about how, why certain large corporations were open during the pandemic, and why they had to stay closed. And I thought that was unfair. And so, but these are discussions hopefully that we'll be able to have post-pandemic when we're back to normal life. But at the same time as well, we want to make sure we get our economy back in running, and that we, everybody's back to work as well. And so, we did have CERB payments. They did help out a number of different people, but we want to make sure that, we get jobs back, we get people excited to get back to getting to work and strengthening our economy that was doing pretty good before the pandemic. And so I hope that answers your question, Gurpreet.
Yes, thank you. The reason why I asked that question was precisely, because of the point that you mentioned. A lot of smaller businesses, may not be qualifying for some support, while companies that are making billions of dollars in profit are getting everything, rent subsidies and the wage subsidies and than
Well-
giving dividends and bonuses and whatnot, which is grossly unfair.
Yeah, so I'll just add one thing is that at the Peel Regional Council, we put forth a number of motions that passed unanimously, where we urge the provincial government to also consider allowing some of these small businesses to remain open at a limited capacity.
Yeah.
You had IKEA open, and you had literally no really kind of regulation on how many people are coming in and out. And it seemed pretty ironic that that they're open, but the small businesses were not open. They weren't allowed anybody, let alone even 20% or 25% capacity. And so I fully agree with you, Vipulji.
Sure. So thank you again for speaking to us today, for sharing your thoughts, and we'll continue to reach out to you, sir, because these virtual sessions will continue over the next 4 months. For now on a bi-weekly basis, and from July they will take place every week. So we'll reach out to you again. And so our next speaker is Councillor Charmaine Williams. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Tejas.
Yeah, before we get to the councillor, I'll just briefly reintroduce our sponsors for this event. Councillor, if you could just please bear with us for a few seconds. So just to a big thank you to our sponsors. This health forum is supported in large part by the City of Brampton through the Advanced Brampton Fund. And we also have other sponsors, Truly Financial, Blue Umbrella Financial Services, Krins Life Sciences Inc., and Tangentia. Thank you to all of our sponsors for making this possible. If you're interested in other sponsorship opportunities, please get in touch with us at Canada, India, USA Development Forum at gmail.com. Thank you. Over to you, Councillor.
Yeah, so let's bring up her profile so we can introduce Councillor Williams.
Yeah.
So Charmaine Williams is a city councillor for Brampton in wards 7 and 8. She is a certified multi-systemic therapist, behavioral consultant, and a councillor. She has worked in a number of therapeutic programs and organizations like Associated Youth Services of Peel, Youth Substance Abuse Program, Peel Children's Center, and the Reach Out Center for Kids in Peel and Halton region. So over to you, Councillor Williams.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Vipul and Tejas, for having me here. I am the city councillor for wards 7 and 8, and I just love what you guys are doing. Anytime we can get information out to people on how to get supports, educating themselves on what's going on, it's so important. So thank you so much for doing this. We've been really hit hard by this pandemic, haven't we? And so I think providing this platform is great. And well, I'd like to tell you a bit about myself, professional background. As you mentioned earlier, I am a certified multi-systemic therapist and consultant. I have almost 20 years experience in a career with children's mental health and providing a voice to families that are coping with domestic violence, mental illness, trauma, and other personal challenges. And I just have to say, I'm home with 5 kids. And as soon as I start talking, that's when they want you. Isn't that right? Any of us who are parents here know the struggle is real. Okay, go ask Daddy, okay? He's upstairs. Yes, say hi. Sorry about that.
Okay, we are all in the same boat.
Yes, he's saying hi now. This is my 3rd child, Malcolm. And it's funny that he's coming here because before I engaged in politics, it was 6 days after I had him, I had a pretty significant brain hemorrhage that hospitalized me for almost 2 months, and I was recovering. Okay, go ask Daddy. Go ask Daddy. And so, when you're faced with a major health challenge like that, you really realize how important and how short life is. And I think this is the same place where many of us are at right now with this pandemic. We know the pandemic is forcing us inwards and inside our homes. So we have a lot of time to think about life, think about our choices, think about how we need to pivot and, just be able to get ourselves out of this situation. So I understand that all of us are in this, but we need to be kind to each other and support each other through. Well, the pandemic has greatly impacted many of us. And, the Peel Regional Police have reported that there has been an increase in family conflict, requiring domestic de-escalation strategies and intervention from our Peel Regional Police. And we all need to give attention to that. We need to pay attention to how we are living in and coping with the pandemic. Environments impacts an individual's mental health, and how you've been raised in your environment will determine how you cope and deal with stress. And one of the main strategies that therapists would encourage you to practice is to go out and socialize, be with other people, get exercise. But COVID has shut that down, right? It's completely opposite of how we need to live in a society to be healthy. And so what now? But I think all of us at the city has kept the health and the well-being of staff and residents at the top of mind, and recognized early on that these devastating impacts this pandemic has and will have on our community and at the local economy. So the city has remained steadfastly committed to those in need, and while continuing to support the public by providing essential and critical services for day-to-day life. And I'm so incredibly proud of the city staff and throughout this whole pandemic, and the response to the COVID-19 pandemic has been a result of the preparation that our staff has, together with our local partners and volunteers and businesses, and largely guided by a Brampton emergency management team. Much of this support comes through its COVID-19 task force that I know my colleagues and Mayor Brown has mentioned as well. Well, I am the Youth Support Task Force co-lead along with Councillor Singh, and we speak and we talk about how the pandemic has impacted youth. And so Brampton, is one of the youngest cities in Canada, with more than 130,000 youth within the ages of 14 to 29. Okay, go ask Daddy for help, honey. He's upstairs. Recognizing the impacts that COVID-19 has on our community, it is especially difficult and stressful time for some, and we continue to engage with youth and provide resources and supports, including mental health supports, access to food and shelter, financial support for international students, and all done in a safe and fun programming way to keep kids active. So what have we done? We've done quite a bit, guys. I'm really impressed with our Youth Support Task Force staff. So to date, we've surveyed more than 250 Brampton youth to determine how the pandemic has impacted them, and what to identify required supports that they need. We've worked closely with school boards, over 40 community organizations, groups, the region of Peel, and other stakeholders on an ongoing basis to exchange information and bridge that gap. We actually meet with all of these organizations once a month to do fact sharing and to do organization sharing, and to really make sure all of us throughout the city are on the same page with what is being available so that we can support our young people. And it's not just our young people, it's also parents as well. We celebrated National Youth Week, virtual Brampton Youth Day, and inspirational youth speakers, which was so great. We've hosted to date 6 Instagram live chats with Mayor Brown and myself and Councillor Singh, and combined we've seen almost 500 participants in those Instagram live events. And I also want to encourage all of you to check out the Youth Support Task Force website, and it's at brampton.ca/youth-task-force. And this site is a one-stop shop website with resources, information, including everything from mental health supports to learning at home resources. And especially, I want our young people to take note of the work tab. We know many of our young people, anybody who has teenagers out there, you can put your hand up and say, I do. I have one as well. Looking for summer job and summer employment is very important. And so we have a tab there that has resources available to our youth who are looking for jobs. And I'm really happy that a couple weeks ago, I put forward the motion to see our young people 12 and up to get vaccinated, because I had a number of parents saying, my kids are 16, they're working in grocery stores and they're not eligible. We need to make sure our young people are eligible to get vaccinated, because some of them are essential workers. So we want to make sure they're safe too. And I'm very happy that the province has now opened it up to 12-year-olds, which is a great thing. We need that herd immunity, and the Pfizer vaccine has been said to be safe for our young people. So I want to encourage you all to think about getting your young people vaccinated. And so, because mental health is so important, I said earlier that, your environment impacts how you cope and deal with stress. And because all of us are inside, we are seeing the same faces over and over again. We're probably a little more snippy and snappy with our loved ones. But, this is what it's a pandemic. So be kind to yourself. But if you do need more supports, it is out there. The CMHA, which is the Canadian Mental Health Association in Peel, they have a 24/7 crisis support line. It's 905-278-9036. Please call if you are in need. If you are a parent with a young person in your home, young person up to the age of 24, wheretostart.ca is a great website to start, and it gets you connected with organizations that help you deal with parenting. You can get online one-to-one therapy and counseling. Also, there is the crisis line, which is another great line. It's 416-410-8615 to speak to a crisis worker. And that used to be done through the Peel Children's Center, but it's now called Every Mind Mental Health Services. Also, Indus.ca, a great organization, provides supports that are non-for-profit for community organized for almost 35 years to the South Asian community, and there's PCHS as well. Please look into these organizations if you're in need of support. So overall, we continue to engage with youth and with everyone to provide resources and food, shelter. I want everyone to know that the supports are out there. I really encourage the conversation, because we have to take care of our minds. And when we take care of our minds, we take care of each other. We'll be in a better state to take care of all of those around us. So it's okay. It's okay to be a little selfish and say, how do I take some time to cope, and how do I take some time to de-stress? I've been seeing so many people walking on our paths around Brampton, and that fills me with joy. And I know everyone is doing the split up. When you see somebody coming, everybody kind of splits up and walk around, but still smile and wave and say, I'm here with you. We are a community and city with so many different diverse community groups we all have the same type of brain. We all just want to connect with each other, and a smile is a great way to start. So thank you so much, everyone. I look forward to more questions and conversations as we continue.
Sure. Thank you for such wonderful remarks and so much information. Actually, you have given us so much detailed information about websites and resources and whatnot available. That is precisely actually the reason why we are doing this, to provide the valuable information to people that can benefit from it. So we have Dr. Lawrence Lowe, who has just joined us. Dr. Lowe, welcome. Just before I get to you, we have got one quick question for Councillor Williams, and then I'll get to you. So Councillor, as you know, we have been asking one question to the speaker, and just to touch base upon what you just mentioned in your remarks, the lockdowns and the social isolation is creating huge mental health issues and possibly substance abuse issues as well, not just in adults, but also in youth. You have worked extensively on these issues. So do you think some of the effects will be long lasting and create permanent negative impact on youth? What can be done at the city level to reverse the negative consequences of pandemic? You know, just like Councillor Dhillon has been doing this through sports, right? What else can be done, you know, to mitigate the effects?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I'm sure it fills many of us with a lot of concern and worry. And I think that really comes down to each individual, and especially parents. I always say kids don't raise themselves; they are raised by their environment and who is in that environment, teaching them to cope with stress. And kids often learn visually. They don't listen to words, they listen to what they see, right? And so we have to be mindful that as parents, we have to be learning and practicing healthy ways to cope. And the city is facilitating that through offering supports, but also I'm the chair of the Community Safety Advisory Committee. And we are looking at organizations and different ways in which the city can work with the region to make sure that we're doing the best practice with regards to mental health and healthy lifestyle. So you have a lot of attention placed on our recreational services, getting our paths cleared. I know it might seem little, but just making sure our paths were cleared during the winters to let people walk actually does a lot. It seems it's not significant, but it is, because we want people to still get outside during this time in the pandemic. You see, we're all advocating to have our parks open during this time so our kids can play. And just imagine, if you get your kids out for a walk and your kids to play, the amount of times you kids will smile and you'll laugh decreases that stress. And that's what we need all of us to start doing more often, because in the house, you're snappy, like I said earlier, a bit snappier, everybody's a little bit irritated, it's dark inside, recycled air, it really does impact your mood. So we at the city have been really fighting hard to make sure that we have ways and places for people to get outside and to de-escalate, de-stress, but also making sure we are connected with those mental health organizations so that when people call into the city, because I'm sure Councillor Dhillon can account, people will call us. We're not mental health professionals, some of us aren't, but we do have connection to those mental health organizations, and we need to make sure we have those resources available. And so that is one thing we do. If we keep in contact with what is available in the city, then we know we can pass that on to our residents. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. As I mentioned earlier, we will keep in touch regarding this health forum over the next few months. And please feel free to share some relevant information that we can also share through this forum over the next 4 months. We have 11 more sessions coming up after this one. Let's move on to our next speaker. Tejas, if you can bring up the slide for Dr. Lowe. Dr. Lawrence Lowe, actually right now you don't need any introduction, everybody knows you. But still I will just read it out quickly. He is the Medical Officer of Health for Peel region that covers Brampton, Mississauga, Caledon. Prior to his time at Peel Public Health, Dr. Lowe served at all 3 levels of government in 2 provinces. He worked at the Public Health Agency of Canada in Vaccine Safety Division at Fraser Health Authority in British Columbia as a medical health officer for Burnaby and the Tri-Cities, and as a senior medical consultant to Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health. He entered practice as a family physician in Heart Lake in Brampton before completing a master's at Johns Hopkins and specialty training at Peel Public Health as a senior resident in 2011. So over to you, Dr. Lowe.
Yeah, thank you, Vipul and Tejas for the opportunity, and thank you, Councillor Dhillon and Councillor Williams, for the opportunity to share the stage with you all this morning. I was asked to come and sort of speak a little bit about what has undoubtedly been a very difficult year for our community. But I want to preface and start my remarks by saying that, you know, the light at the end of this very long tunnel is getting much brighter. You know, I think we are still seeing high levels of transmission of COVID-19 in our community, but the rates are starting to come down thanks to really the collective efforts, I would say, of our community coming together and respecting the stay-at-home order as much as possible. As our cases come down, hopefully the hospital and ICU situation will start to resolve. Patient transfers still continue, surgeries are still canceled, and this has obviously been a significant burden on healthcare delivery in our community, as well as just the ability to address the ongoing pandemic response in our community. But we do know that as cases go, so will hospitalization and ICU demand. And if we all manage to sort of stay the course, at least on the next little while, continue to limit contact outside our homes, we will get there. The other thing that gives me a certain cautious optimism that is also thanks to our collective efforts is our vaccination rollout. And this week we did have our biggest vaccination week yet. We delivered over 150,000 doses into arms, added almost 10% additional first dose coverage in our community. We're now sitting at approximately 55% of our adult population that has received one dose. And really, when it comes to our vaccine rollout, we're trying to get to three things that will hopefully let us start to ease many of the measures that have been in place with greater certainty. 75% first dose coverage is where the UK and Israel started to see a relief on their hospitalization and ICU demand. So that addresses a lot of the severity that occurs in the community. 75% first dose coverage and 20% second dose coverage is where you start to really to make a dent in transmission. You start to see decreasing case counts associated with increasing protection within the community. And finally, 75% two-dose coverage, which is the ultimate milestone that we are targeting, is where you're hopefully getting to a point where you're interrupting community transmission of COVID-19 altogether. You know, obviously, it doesn't go without saying that we need everyone's help to get there. So at this point in time, everyone in our community is eligible 18 plus to get a shot. And so I encourage you to visit peelregion.ca/COVID-19 vaccine to make your appointment. I also would highlight that the province is actively working and coming out with protocols and guidelines on second doses, which we're hoping will be, you know, possibly advanced in a community like ours that has just seen so much difficulties throughout the pandemic, as well as doses for people under the age of 18, starting with the 12 to 17-year-old cohort. And we're still waiting for guidance from the province as to what that is going to look like. But I understand they would like to do that in very short order to offer that protection to our teenagers. So there's a lot to be hopeful for. And I know that the year has been extremely difficult with all the measures, with the high levels of transmission that we've seen in the region of Peel. But I think I have really been heartened. And as Vipul shared in my in my bio, I started out as a family doctor practicing in Brampton. I've seen and treated many people in the community firsthand, and then now have the privilege to serve in the current role as medical officer of health, together with a great team and a great council that has really backed us in trying to really control this disease in our community. I think the sacrifices of our community, our collective efforts, both around adhering to the precautions and also around the vaccination, will see us through and will win the day. And I think brighter days are definitely ahead. So thank you for having me here today, and I'm really looking forward to any discussion and questions.
Sure. So thank you for those remarks, Dr. Lowe. I have got two questions for you. The first one is regarding the mixed messaging for vaccinations. You know, AstraZeneca, people already had some questions, and then you know, you had the Premier and a lot of other political leaders taking it, you know, Prime Minister Trudeau taking it. And now again, we are being told Canada is going to put a hold on it. So, I mean, it creates more confusion in the minds of the people, whether to take it, not to take it. Like when I took the vaccination last month, I got Moderna, and my son, 23, he got vaccination last week, and he got Pfizer. So different vaccinations. Now there is a talk going around, you know, that you can take mixed vaccinations, maybe first dose of Moderna, second dose of Pfizer. So, I mean, you know, why this mixed messaging?
Well, you know, I think, Vipul, it really speaks to the nature of the evolving science. We have a new disease, we have new interventions. And so certainly what has been interpreted as mixed messaging has just been, to some degree, science keeping up with the data and evidence. We saw it with masks, for example. We saw it with, you know, aerosol transmission. We've seen it as well now with vaccinations. And I will say this, it is really unfortunate, sort of how the conversation around AstraZeneca unfolded. You know, I really think, first of all, anyone who did receive AstraZeneca, you did the right thing. I think to remain unprotected, especially at the rates of COVID we were having in our community during the course of the third wave, that would have actually posed more significant risk of severe health outcomes and mortality than the rare side effect of clotting that's been associated with a very specific segment of AstraZeneca. But to the extent, Vipul, that you and I are Moderna twins, which is great. You know, I think you know, all of the vaccine products are largely safe and effective, and especially in a context of high transmission. Really, the whole first dose, take the first vaccine you're offered. That was the best strategy, and to some extent, I think has really helped us. Maybe not necessarily controlling the third wave, which is all measures, but hopefully providing our community with some semblance of protection to ensure that we never really have to put these measures in place again. So the last thing I'll say about AstraZeneca is it is really unfortunate because this is the most fridge stable and the most conventional vaccine that we have. It's probably going to be the big workhorse for the global efforts to vaccinate. And so I would say for anyone who did receive it, I said you did the right thing. The province, as I understand, is looking at the mixing and matching thing, but you will get a second dose of something, whether it's another dose of AZ, where the risk of that rare side effect is even more vanishingly small than it is with the first, or some other vaccine product that is also approved by Health Canada.
So, I mean, just a quick follow-up on that. So, as I mentioned, I got my first dose of Moderna, right? Now, when I get my turn for the second dose, which is actually in August, but I hope I may get it earlier. So now, for the second dose, if they offer me a Pfizer, should I take it or should I just wait until they have more doses of Moderna again?
So that's being actively discussed and looked at right now. There is data that has come from Western Europe and the UK where they've mixed and matched. And I understand that the Federal Advisory Committee is going to provide some insight on that. The initial evidence suggests that mixing and matching may actually produce a more robust immune response, but it may have more side effects. You might feel more tired or a sore arm or whatever the case might be. But it is a lot better than getting COVID and playing that, taking that game of chance. And so I think we'll wait and see what the federal government guidelines are when the National Advisory Committee comes out on the mixed doses piece. And also on your question, Vipul, I am also hoping that we'll be able to advance second doses. And I think with the supply that that's arriving here, I'm hoping that we will see the province maybe prioritize communities like ours that have been particularly hard hit to ensure we get to that 75% two-dose milestone sooner.
Sure. So before we move to our next speaker, Rick Bernard, I just have one more question for you. And then I'll come to you, Tejas. So this question is to Dr. Lowe as a person. I mean, people know you as the all-powerful chief medical officer, but you are also a human being, with feelings, with families. So here is a question for Dr. Lowe, the person. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. That's how you and other medical officers of health all over the world may feel these days. People often say, that the decisions you take affect the life and livelihoods of millions of people, but it doesn't make a dent in yours. So how does it feel to take these tough decisions? And does it take a toll, on you and the people close to you?
It's a great question. First of all, I want to say that I've been really grateful for an awesome. I mean, I used to actually be very interested in working more globally. I actually was involved with a nonprofit organization in the Dominican Republic. We were doing, global health work, research with the migrant Haitian population in the Dominican Republic. I used to be part of the World Medical Association, attend meetings in Geneva, and local public health was always sort of how I paid the bills. And I always used to say to myself, well, I'm not really seeing myself in local public health for, the rest of my life. I really want to do more international stuff. I said, but if there is one local public health unit that I would want to work for, it'd be Peel. And you know, sure enough, I think it was just maybe like Final Destination or Destiny or whatever the case is, and that's where I landed. And then, of course, as we know, just with our community makeup, you know, just the challenges that we've had. But I'll be honest, there is no other community that I actually wanted to work for. You know, I've worked in BC, I've worked, you know, you know, I've lived all over Ontario. Like I lived in London and in Windsor. I've lived up in Ottawa, and I've always wanted to live and work in Peel. So I think it's actually, you know, I got the work part down. Unfortunately, I live in Toronto because it's closer to my wife's work. But I will say that at the first set that we have an awesome community, we have a resilient community, and it's an honor and a privilege to serve. On the topic of the decisions, yeah, I mean, I have to stick to the science and the data and the evidence as I see it. And I think the reality is that we've been trying to thread a needle, right? There is the extreme of going really hard on one way, and there's the extreme of going really hard on the other. And we've seen where you don't take measures, what can happen, unfortunately. And I certainly know, for example, many of our community, we have a diaspora that's very tightly connected with India, certainly. And I think what we're seeing there, and the crisis that's there right now unfolding is unfathomable. I think it's just something that I think, you know, when you go to one extreme where the measures haven't been implemented or unfortunately hadn't fully taken effect. But we also know we've seen the other extreme where, you know, you had Melbourne, Australia, which was under a lockdown for 111 days, where people couldn't go beyond 5 kilometers of their home, and the police were actually checking vehicles and like making sure, like, I mean, so we've had to try to thread a middle course here in Canada. I'll say as well, we were never going to be New Zealand or Taiwan, because we were deeply integrated with a very challenged response, if I can say so politically correctly, in the United States. And so we were never going to be like some of those island countries. So I think to the extent that I've had the support of the community, my wife, my 2 daughters who are, I mean, they're learning virtually. And one of them actually showed up at a council meeting, which was really fun. Friends on Zoom. Everyone knows that I'm actually a very social person, so I have not seeing friends for as long as I have, especially in the position I hold, has been very difficult. But I'm looking forward to barbecues and, you know, restaurant and patio dining and goodness knows all these other things coming back, and just being able to hug and spend time with your family and friends in the future. And I think that's what keeps me going, knowing that the community is largely behind us, that we're all aiming for the same thing, and that we're all collectively pushing towards the same goal. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lowe. So I've got one audience question actually. I have a question for Councillor Dhillon and Williams. Are you doing anything so that the residents don't have to wait for 4 months for the second dose and can actually get it sooner? I think Dr. Lowe already answered it, that we may get it sooner. That's something that the audience, one of the audience members asked. So anyway, so I believe Councillor Jeff Bowman is not available to join us today. In his place, Rick Bernard has agreed to participate in today's forum. So Rick is an interim manager of emergency management with Brampton Fire and Emergency Services. He has been serving and acting alongside Councillor Jeff Bowman since the start of the pandemic, coordinating the city's response and participating in the social services task force. So over to you, Mr. Bernard.
Great, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. And I know we've already heard so many different responses from the city and also the region, many different things that we've been doing from day one here too. One of our main goals here at the city is to support the region appeal and also our provincial partners. Usually in many different emergencies, for example, large scale ice storms and flooding, cyber attacks, train derailments, that sort of thing. The city really takes a lead role. One area that they don't take a lead role is health emergencies. So epidemics, pandemics really fall to our health partners. And of course, you know, we have the lead here, Dr. Lowe from the Peel Health. And one of the things that we've been doing is supporting our health partners. So to give you real live examples, some of the things that we've been doing from day one is supporting testing centers that we have here in the city of Brampton, working with our provincial partners, our health partners, to make sure that happens, providing facilities, making sure they have all the infrastructure and support that they need to be able to provide that service to the public, including things like small things that sometimes we don't think about, really like building maintenance and providing security and cleaning services, those types of things. Also, if we fast forward to present day, one of the other big pieces that we're supporting is the Vaccination Center. So supporting Dr. Lowe's team and making sure that they have, again, all of the resources that they need to be able to provide a vaccination center, no matter where those centers are in Brampton. We're making sure that our staff are there and working and taking the lead, really from Peel Health, but making sure that we support that operation too. I'd be remiss to, I think Councillor Williams mentioned it too, but our staff here at the City of Brampton have been tremendous throughout all of this, especially our ones on the front line, our bylaw workers, our security staff, our transit operators, and ones sometimes you don't even really think about that, really don't get named, but are really on the back end. And to give you an example is maybe just our IT group. They've spent thousands of hours putting together online services for our residents that would not really have existed if we didn't come into this pandemic. It probably would have taken a few more years to get some of those projects up and running, but they continue to today to provide those types of options for our residents to make sure that they have a really safe opportunity and environment to conduct their city business moving forward. So those are some of the types of examples for some of our city staff that have pitched in within this pandemic. Also, we've heard about 3 task forces here today: the social, the seniors, the youth. One more that we have here, and I'll touch upon a couple different programs very quickly. The other one we have here is the Economic Support Task Force, and that one's also been a really, really pertinent support to many of our businesses here in Brampton. We really provide a lot of the information, try to streamline the process for some of the supports that are available to our more so small businesses. Sometimes large businesses, they have the ability to cope, and medium-sized businesses have the ability to cope again through some of these difficulties, but really focusing on our small businesses. And some of the things that we've been providing since the beginning of the pandemic, in terms of a referral or support, or making sure they know where to go in order to apply or get more information on different types of programs. Some of these different programs are possibly deferring taxes, making sure they know where to go to get that type of information. There's been many rebates and subsidies and different grants and rent reliefs that are available. Sometimes it's a little difficult to navigate for some of our businesses. So we've been providing different forms, teletown calls to our businesses to make sure that they stay connected and make sure they know what types of options are available to them. So that's another task force. Another group that we have here too is our Backyard Gardens program. And that's been a really, really popular one with our residents. So early in the emergency, almost about a year ago, maybe a little bit more, we realized there was going to be, we already had a food insecurity issue, and it really was magnified with the closure of a lot of these places. And we wanted to get our residents involved too. So we really created this program, and really in a nutshell, we just made sure that, if you wanted to help out to provide food to some of our food anchors that would be able to redistribute to some of the people that really needed it in our community, we had the ability to have residents apply online and say that they were interested, and we would deliver the seeds to them. We would also deliver the soil to them too. So throughout, starting, I believe, probably the beginning of March or so, right through to September and October. Of course, different vegetables are planted at different times and so on. But with the help of many volunteers also too, that's another group that doesn't get a lot of recognition too, but we've had many volunteers here step up and really serve the community. And they would help drop off seeds and soil. And when the time came to be able to pick up all of the vegetables, they did that. And we also have community gardens here too that help to donate, and gardens that firefighters help to grow. And it's a work of a lot of our volunteers that make those connections and act as a bit of a glue to that whole process too. The other piece too, and I know I'm going quickly, that there's a lot to cover, but I think it's important to understand too, is we donated a lot of PPE to different organizations, mainly our long-term care and some of our senior residences back in the very beginning and right through the summer of 2020. I know it was very, very difficult to get your hands on PPE just because it was challenging and there was a bit of competition for resources, if you will, and some of them, they just weren't available. And we started prepping for it even in 2019, to tell you the honest truth. We knew something was coming down the line. So we did actually start to purchase at the end of 2019 into 2020 some PPE that was available to make sure that we were ready from a city perspective. I know a lot of the, I know, and Dr. Lowe, you could speak to this too, but much of the PPE was really, really pushed towards our healthcare sector, which was warranted and needed. But some of the other PPEs that maybe they didn't use as much, we had our hands on it, and there was people that really needed it desperately in the community, and we were able to provide things like masks and hand sanitizer and gloves and that sort of thing too. So that was another response that we had from a city perspective too. One of the other groups, I know we're running out of time too, but quickly, one of the other groups too is our reopening and recovery working group, also led by one of our Brampton councillors too. And that's a group that really analyzes different services and make sure that they're connected to the public and listening to the public in terms of what they want reopened, how they feel about the reopenings, making sure that their voice is active too in the community and in line with some of the city decisions that are made in terms of reopening too. So that's another main group that we have. And lastly, I really just want to close with our communications piece. We've been trying to communicate as much as possible, dovetailing, of course, on Peel Health's communications, Ontario Health's communications. But I also want to say that, the reason for this forum, I believe, is to make sure that we connect people with resources too. And I would encourage everyone, if they want to learn more about the different types of resources that I've just kind of skimmed over, really have a look at our city website in Brampton, and also the Regional Peel website too. There's many different resources there that you would not believe that existed, and I think people really need to be aware of that. And also, just lastly, if you have a chance to jump on any of the forums that we offer, any of the teletown halls that we offer too, it's a really, really great opportunity to ask your questions and make sure that you stay connected to this ever changing emergency that we're in today. So I'll stop there, and thank you for the time, and I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick, for the information. So I will post one question, which Mr. Bernard as well as Mr. Lowe, you can both address. See, for the last 15 months, the entire focus has been on COVID and COVID-related cases and hospitalizations and whatnot. However, that has also pushed a lot of other surgeries and a lot of other health issues to the back burner. Now people that have some heart issues that need some bypass surgeries, people that have cancer, and many other important issues, knee replacements. I'm just giving some examples. It may not be COVID related, but it is very essential to the person that is suffering from it. So where are we in terms of that? Has the backlog gone up considerably? Is it now coming down as the cases are coming down? Where are we in terms of non-COVID health issues?
Dr. Lowe, I think you should take this one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I could start. I think, this is a really significant thing, both the healthcare backlog as well as the public health backlog. Certainly public health, for example, our health unit has been 80% or 90% redeployed really to the ongoing COVID response, outbreak investigation, case and contact management, enforcement, of the stay-at-home order together, like our public health inspectors, and also all of the mass vaccination efforts. So a lot of the usual public health services, including things like other case and contact management, maternal child programs, healthy eating, healthy active living kind of programs, those have all unfortunately been paused because of the massive redeployment of our staff. And so it's going to also even things like school immunization programs and immunization record tracking, like all this stuff is going to need to be restarted again once COVID is over. And certainly with healthcare, certainly the cancellation of surgeries, the cancellation of treatments. Of course, urgent treatments and emergency service still continue, and if you require them, I encourage you to go to the hospital. They will be able to receive you. But more of the elective surgeries that are not necessarily life-saving but life-changing also will need to be ramped up again. I think two things about this. First of all, I think as we've seen in places where the virus has spun out of control, if you don't have a focus on COVID, you eventually end up with your healthcare system being overwhelmed as well anyway, and resulting in the similar backlog. So every country that has navigated this has either, will experience some sort of healthcare backlog, either as a result of the closures and needing to free up space, or actually just having had a healthcare system that's just totally overwhelmed. So I think that was always going to be a consequence of working through a human health disaster, but it will be absolutely vital for additional resources to be given to our healthcare sector to ensure that, surgeries can operate, on longer hours, extended hours, more rooms, more things can be done to actually make up the backlog, as well as for public health and public health services to ensure that, for example, our childhood immunization programs don't fall behind. Our, maternal child and well baby checks can also start up again, ensuring that we're dealing with sexually transmitted infections through our healthy sexuality program, those kind of things. So it's going to take a lot more resources in recovery. And there will also likely be a prioritization as to which programs come back when, depending on how we demobilize and fade out of the COVID response.
Sure. So Councillor Dhillon or Williams, you want to come in on that?
Unless Councillor Williams wants to jump in, I think it was very good answer provided.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I have to just echo again what's being said about the staff response. I think everyone is taking this pandemic really seriously and knowing that these pandemic will have a ripple effect on our community. And if we start putting some strategies in place now at the beginning, it will decrease how far those ripples will go. So I think we all of us are invested in making sure that we are, having positive and healthier outcomes, even though we know that the impacts is still going to be not the greatest, right? We're just trying to decrease the impact, and that's the most important thing.
Sure. So that brings us to the last speaker of the day. Actually, he is not with us in person, but he has sent us a pre-recorded video message from Regional Councillor Paul Vicente from wards 1 and 5. Before we play the message, Tejas, you wanted to say something, I guess?
Yeah, I just had a question for Dr. Lowe, and maybe the councillors wanted to step in. Given, Dr. Lowe, given that you exercised your authority under Section 22, is that something that you should have? I mean, hindsight is always 20/20, but is that something that could have been started earlier, given the information that you had, say, at the beginning of this year? And in terms of accountability, given it's the councillors who are ultimately accountable to the electors, is this something that the council was debating or considering in terms of asking either the region to push for Section 22 orders? So Dr. Lowe, I'll ask you first, and then if either councillor wants to step in, they may do so. Thank you.
So yeah, thanks, Tejas. I've actually issued a number of Section 22 orders throughout the course of the pandemic. I'm assuming you're speaking about the Section 22 order around expedited workplace closures that came out recently. No, yes. It would not have made sense earlier in the pandemic. Earlier in the pandemic, we were already working with a wild-type coronavirus, and we would order closures regardless, if we felt that they were necessary. I think we saw that in particular with a high-profile closure of a distributing facility in March. And similarly, we had a lot of voluntary closures in the course of our outbreak investigations. But with the variants spreading in our community, we were seeing that workplace outbreaks were a whole different ballgame. Previously, our outbreak investigators could get in, infection prevention control measures, cohorting, send people home, and then really move progressively. But with the variants, we were finding that by the time we got in, it had spread so far and so fast that it was not necessarily safe for the workplaces and for the communities once you get past a certain threshold. So the issuance of the workplace section 22 in the third wave was in recognition of the novel threat that the variants posed to our workplaces, and also in essence put on notice all of the workplaces that we will move to close quickly. In the past, we would try to progressively work with them, close off parts, send people home, and then eventually get to closure. But now we were saying, if you've got 5, you're closed, because we need to make sure. And so that was our way to basically message to the community through a section 22 that all workplaces were subject to expedited closure.
Can I just say how brave Dr. Lowenslow has been during this whole time? I'm so impressed when you make the decisions, and you said earlier, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. That's the life of politics. There are always going to be people on an opposing side. Even if you were to decide to give everyone $150,000, you know what I mean? There would be somebody on the other side to oppose it. So I have to commend Dr. Low and your bravery to make the decisions that you've made to close businesses when people are saying businesses need to be open and think about the future of businesses. Even the decisions around school, parents want to have their kids in school for a number of reasons, but we also know that school is not entirely safe for our young people. And it is the reason why spread has been occurring in our communities. So I just think you have to keep trusting the professionals, and Dr. Low is a professional. I am not going to question his judgment because I am not a scientist. I am not a doctor. I'm a professional mental health, but when it comes to COVID, I'm going to trust Dr. Low. So thank you so much for your bravery, and we have to keep trusting you.
Vipulji, I'm just going to add a point in as well, if you don't mind. Because I have to leave now. Unfortunately, I have to attend a funeral, but I just wanted to leave by thanking everybody for organizing. But I want to give a shout out to Dr. Low as well. As a counselor, we shoot him a text at different times of night. We have micro issues that we have to deal with individual residents, where when you're a resident, your issue is the most important issue in the world. And I want to thank Dr. Low and his entire staff for not ignoring any of those little issues as well. Every person matters. We have 1.5 million people, but every person matters. And it's those little, you'd think on a grand scale, the little issues, but the big issues for those individual people. And, he's been able to assist us in those and get his staff working on it. When we needed to get some information for this forum for you guys, he was able to quickly get his staff, and sometimes he, looks up, researches stuff himself too. And so I just want to thank him and his staff. It's such a tough job. We have such a tough time as counselors, dealing 24 hours a day on things, but he's been on top of it. So, I see some people clapping, and we could just give him a quick clap then. Thanks so much, Dr. Low.
Thank you. If I could respond, I certainly don't go forward on my own power and impulse, right? I think I've been very fortunate to have the support and backing and the leadership of regional councils, city councils, all the municipal staff, as well as a really awesome team at Peel Public Health and community partners all across. I think that's really what gives me the strength to look and say, well, this is what the data and science tells us to do, and this is what we need to do to keep our community safe, at least in this immediate term piece. And in the midst of a human health emergency, we're not going to get it perfectly right. And I want to be, completely honest with you. I will, I may make mistakes here and there, just like anyone else. But I will always be straight with the community and let you know, at least from a scientific perspective, from the data and evidence, this is why we made the decision when we did. And Councillor Dhillon, on the topic of those pieces, we do take those constituent concerns very seriously, because it does, it's something that speaks to how our program or how our response might be going. And I always believe that you need to get the small things right so that you can also get the big things right. So certainly, look forward to continuing working with you, and thanking all of you as well for your support and leadership.
So thank you for all that you're doing, Dr. Low. I mean, as you mentioned, you wanted to work on a global scale. So even though you are working locally, you are still working on a global issue. So that is the consolation. Now the only thing we have left is a video message from Regional Councillor Paul Vicente from wards 1 and 5. Tejas, if you can have the, I think it's about a 4-minute long pre-recorded video. And after that, we'll just deliver closing remarks. And that will be it for today.
And I have to run. I appreciate being here today, but thank you so much.
For about 5 more minutes.
Oh, 5. Okay, I'll stay 5. I might have to turn off my video at one point, but it's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just about last 5 minutes. So can we have the video, Tejas?
As you know, would you believe we're having technical issues with accessing the video?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me try one more time. Just give me a second.
Sure. In the meantime, I have got one more audience question. Dr. Low, if you want to quickly address in 30 seconds, can you please share summarized information why novel coronavirus has a higher rate of mutation than other RNA coronavirus?
Oh, it's a great question. We're still learning so much about this virus. And to be honest, even the mutations, those weren't unexpected because we know viruses can constantly mutate. Every infection is an opportunity for the viruses to change. We know that this particular coronavirus has been very, it's a non-scientific term, but we always say that it's very sloppy, essentially because the RNA genetic material doesn't always copy perfectly with each case. And so it's definitely been one of these more faster changing, I guess the scientific term is unstable in terms of its genetic material, which is why we've seen so many variants emerge so quickly over the course of the pandemic. That also reflects its high rate of infectivity, because a lot more infections equals a lot more opportunities for evolution.
Okay, sure. I believe Tejas is having some issues on the video side. But let me try and see if I can get this going. Let me share the screen and see if that works. Downloads. Send.
Good morning. My name is Paul Vicente, Regional Councillor for Wards 1 and 5. I'm the Vice Chair of Economic Development and Co-Chair of the Mayor's COVID-19 Economic Support Task Force. I would like to thank Vipul Jani and Tejas Avali for inviting me to provide remarks at today's Health Forum on the topic of programs, services, and resources offered by the City of Brampton during COVID-19. It is a pleasure to be here virtually and to address you all today. I'm pleased to be here today alongside Mayor Brown, my councillor colleagues in attendance, and Dr. Lowe to share the work accomplished by the City of Brampton during this past year in response to COVID-19. As this was all new territory for us,
Sorry, just bear with us, please.
So I guess the video is not playing well, right?
Yeah, I think we'll have to skip it for this time.
Okay, that's fine. We'll use it for next time. So anyway, Tejas, if you can just bring up the sponsors page again, and I will deliver the closing remarks.
Yeah, go ahead, Vipul.
Sure. So thank you everyone for sharing such valuable information. We will now share this session on YouTube and on all social media, as well as the Canada, India, USA Development Forum website. Thank you, Mayor Patrick Brown, Dr. Lawrence Lowe, Councillors Gurpreet, Dhillon, Rowena, Santos, Charmaine Williams, and Rick. Once again, thank you to our sponsors, Tangentia, Blue Umbrella Financial Services, Krins Life Sciences, Truly Financial, and the City of Brampton's Advanced Brampton Fund. We'll be back again for session 2 on May 29 with a new topic, which is recovering from the pandemic after getting the virus and how it changed your life and thinking about everything. So this session is now formally closed. Thank you, everyone.